Hello, this is a rehearsal of a presentation for the World Federation Right to Die conference in September 2024. All right, I'm Thaddeus Pope, and this talk is called VSED is an essential end-of-life option despite MAID progress. So this talk is going to be a little bit different than the ones that you heard yesterday and the ones that you're going to hear the rest of today. Because as you can tell, most of this conference is focused on MAID. But for the next 13 minutes, I'm going to be talking about a different end-of-life option. VSED, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. VSED. And I want to start just a little bit south of us in Arklow, Ireland. And that's because that is where Marie Fleming was from. And Marie famously brought a case to the Supreme Court of Ireland seeking a right to medical aid in dying. Now, she was not successful, and the court said that there is no constitutional right to commit suicide. Nevertheless, Marie still proceeded and still hastened her death. Now, not through MAID, of course, but through a backup option, or you might say a second choice. Very often, that backup option is VSED. So let's just look at some other advocates, like Tony Nicholson, who brought his case up to the European Court of Human Rights. Again, unsuccessfully, but Tony then proceeded to hasten his death through a VSED. Or take Debbie Purdy, who brought her case up to the Supreme Court of the UK. Again, mostly unsuccessfully. She then proceeded to hasten her death through VSED. In 2021, we had Jane Brooker, and earlier this year, Wendy Mitchell, right? All used VSED. Plus, it's not just advocates who brought these court cases. It's lawyers like Monica Cook. It's math teachers like Jean Davies. It's the mother of an MSP, Elena Whitman. Even the aristocracy, like Lady Montagu. Right? Those are just some cases of VSED from Ireland and from around the UK. But if you look around, we see even higher measured levels of prevalence in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Switzerland, and even Japan. So just to recap here, the point is when MAID is not available, people often turn to VSED. So here is my roadmap in just two parts. First, what is VSED? And second, VSED matters even when MAID has already been authorized. So what is VSED? It's an end-of-life option that's done by a patient with capacity who is able to take food and fluid by mouth, but makes a voluntary decision to stop doing that. Right? So they say no food, no fluids, no thank you. So this is different than refusing artificial nutrition and hydration, or sometimes called clinically assisted nutrition and hydration, and it's different than the natural loss of appetite at the very end of life. This is a deliberate choice to stop taking fluids by mouth. And the goal, the intent, and the motive in doing that is to cause death from dehydration. And that will happen, of course, typically in 8 to 14 days. Now, there's a lot of confusion surrounding VSED because of many headlines like this where it says, war hero who begged for an assisted death starved himself for 8 weeks before dying. And clearly, if it was for 8 weeks, that's not VSED. In fact, the evidence shows that VSED deaths are peaceful and comfortable. We don't have time to look at all the medical literature on this. This is just one example from the New England Journal of Medicine. 100 Oregon nurses were caring for VSED patients, and they reported that most of those deaths were peaceful with little suffering. And in fact, VSED is endorsed and supported by hospice and palliative care organizations and by other professional medical societies. So that's VSED. VSED still matters even when MAID has been authorized. And let me give you 6 reasons. First, MAID is illegal in most of the world, right? Everywhere on this map that's not blue or green, MAID is not available, which means VSED in those places is the only legal option. Second, even if MAID is legal in a jurisdiction, the patient is often ineligible. They don't qualify for it. So take the United States and Australia, which are 2 of the comparatively more restrictive jurisdictions in the world, right? The patient has to have a 6 or 12-month prognosis to death. And that means that there's going to be a lot of people who have grievous and irremediable suffering who cannot satisfy that 6-month requirement. So people with Huntington's, people with Parkinson's, people with chronic pain, people with completed life, and especially people with dementia, right? Because when you have a 6-month prognosis with dementia, you're not going to have decision-making capacity, and you're not going to be able to self-ingest the medications. In fact, dementia is a real problem even in more liberal jurisdictions. So in the Netherlands, which has far more liberal access than US or Australia, we again see this play out, that when MAID is not available, people turn to VSED. And the rate of VSED in the Netherlands, in some reports, is over 2% of all deaths, which is nearly half of the rate of deaths from euthanasia. And most of those are dementia patients. So the point here is that VSED eligibility is far wider than MAID eligibility. Third, VSED can make the patient eligible, right? So VSED's not just an alternative, not just a substitute for MAID, but it can be a bridge to MAID. So in the US, you can start VSED. That makes you terminally ill, and now you qualify for MAID and can switch to MAID. In Canada, the patient might be on track 2 of MAID because their death is not reasonably foreseeable. Yet, if they begin VSED, now their death is reasonably foreseeable and they can qualify for MAID under track 1. So the point here is VSED can be a bridge to MAID. Reason 4 is that, let's say that MAID is legal and the patient is eligible for it, MAID still might not be accessible. It might be because of the mandatory waiting periods, or it might be because the patient cannot find an available clinician where they are located. So even if MAID is legally available, it is often not practically available. Or VSED is often available far faster than MAID. So again, the point here is VSED accessibility is often wider than MAID accessibility. Reason 5 is about advance requests. So even if MAID is legal, even if the patient is eligible for it, and even if they can access MAID practically, there's a timing problem. And that is that you have to get MAID while you still have capacity, right? And that's not so good, because take the case of dementia, for example. It means that you have to get MAID too soon, at a point when your life is still worthwhile. And this is sometimes called an earliness problem, right? When people think, oh, I can get around that because I can just get my MAID right before I lose capacity. This is sometimes referred to as the 10 minutes to midnight approach. You lose capacity at midnight, so you get MAID at 10 minutes till midnight. But that's a little bit risky because it's hard to prognosticate exactly when you're going to lose capacity. And that window of opportunity can close suddenly and you can miss it. So people say, okay, I get that. I understand that risk. I'll build in a little bit of a buffer. But now you're leaving even more good time on the table. So again, we have this problem of premature dying. Your current situation is still acceptable. So MAID's not a good option for you at this time because you're not ready to die yet. You're concerned about future circumstances. But you're going to lack capacity at that future time, right? That's the nature of progressive dementia. So there's a real dilemma. It's now or never. Get MAID now, which is too early, or never get it. So very few jurisdictions in the entire world permit MAID. Almost none of them permit advance requests. Contrast VSED. VSED advance directives are widely accepted, and there are a growing number of tools to help accomplish a VSED advance directive. So the point here is VSED advance directives are far more widely supported than MAID advance directives. And then finally, some people just prefer VSED over MAID. Admittedly, these are the exceptional patients. If you take how Wendy Mitchell put it, right, who got VSED earlier this year, if assisted dying was available, I would have chosen it in a heartbeat. But some people really do prefer VSED over MAID. It allows more time to say goodbye, and it might be more consistent with their morals. So to wrap it up, VSED has long been seen as just a stopgap, as just a temporary fix or a makeshift solution until we can authorize MAID. But even with authorized MAID, VSED still matters, right? And let me just end with this call to action. In 2022, some end-of-life organizations called for more guidance on VSED. In the past 2 years, we got some more. We now have clinical guidelines for VSED in the US, and we have a revised, really nice set of guidelines from a number of Dutch medical associations. So that's all really good news. But we need to keep going, and we need VSED guidance and guidelines here in Ireland and around the world. Thank you.